It is your prisonplanet.tv memberships that fund so much of what we do here on this operation. And then we're more than happy for the TV show after it's aired live, then be leaked out onto the web to tens of millions of people. That's our goal.
Friday, January 18th, 2013. It's the Alex Jones Show. I'm Paul Joseph Watson, writer with Infowars.com, filling in for Alex today. And the second half of the show will be presented by the Health Ranger, Mike Adams. He'll be joined by Representative Steve Toth to talk about the latest with the gun grab news, as well as Dr. Andrew Wakefield, who, of course, has been vilified for revealing the dangers of vaccines. And coming up shortly, CNN can't get him, but we can. It's the controversial Florida professor who's basically been savaged by the mainstream media for questioning the official narrative behind the Sandy Hook shooting. It's Professor James Tracy, and he'll be live via Skype to take your calls. And of course, if you've been living under a rock for the past few weeks, then the internet is basically aflame with what they're calling Sandy Hook truthers. And there's actually one YouTube video alone which has got over 10.6 million views in the last 10 days alone that talks about some of these questions surrounding the Sandy Hook massacre. So basically, he's been absolutely pillared by the mainstream media. Oh, sorry about that. He's been absolutely pillared by the mainstream media. He was on CNN's Anderson Cooper 360 last Friday, I believe it was. And for 25 minutes, Anderson Cooper attacked him, put his picture up on screen. Basically, it was a surprise that there wasn't a wanted sign next to his name. I don't actually believe in all these theories that are circulating about Sandy Hook. But we're going to talk to the professor before the bottom of the hour. We're going to go over some of the questions that he and others have raised about the Sandy Hook massacre and about the backlash that he's faced from the likes of CNN, from the likes of Fox News. So that's going to be a fascinating talk. We're also going to go to your calls at the top of the hour for Professor James Tracy on all things Sandy Hook. But the top news at the moment on Infowars.com and PrisonPlanet.com, we've heard about the Nerf gun. We've heard about the kid, being suspended for making a gun sign with his hand. But this one really takes the biscuit, and this took place in Mount Carmel, Florida. This is a story just out today. Basically, a 5-year-old girl, a kindergarten girl, had a toy pink gun. It was a Hello Kitty toy pink gun that blew bubbles out of the gun when you pulled the trigger. It's a toy gun for a kindergarten child. She joked with her classmates that she was going to shoot them with her toy pink bubble gun. And of course, the teacher later finds out in this school in Florida, the 5-year-old girl is interrogated without her mother being present for 3 hours by school officials over a Hello Kitty pink toy bubble gun. And it gets worse. The girl told her mother that school officials actually threatened her with jail time. This is a 5-year-old girl. Jail time for making jokes about shooting people with a pink bubble gun. And she was actually suspended. This 5-year-old child was suspended from kindergarten. And get this, school officials as well in this story said that she was making terroristic threats with the toy pink bubble gun, the Hello Kitty gun. So, I mean, this again just heaps on top of the craziness in the aftermath of Sandy Hook. Is it really any wonder that the number of homeschool kids in America has swelled by over 1 million kids in the last decade? when we continue to hear stories like this. I mean, you know, talk about the United States of hysteria. This is a 5-year-old girl interrogated for 3 hours, accused of making terroristic threats, threatened with jail, and suspended for a Hello Kitty toy bubble gun. We're back on the Alex Jones Show. Coming up, we got Professor James Tracy to talk about the Sandy Hook controversy. But now we're joined on the line by Alex Jones with an emergency alert for gun owners. Alex, welcome to the show.
That's right. I've taken a day off to take my son camping, and I got up this morning and began reading the articles at Infowars.com, and I had to call in here to point out that even Infowars.com and even myself and my great researchers, we tend to under or downplay the full magnitude of this. What's happening is so tyrannical and so sensational in how over the top it is. The globalists have a good chance of actually getting most of our guns if we don't completely wake up. What am I talking about? There are 2 key articles right now on Infowars.com. One about Big Sis, to use the see something, say something, Homeland Security spy grid on gun owners. The other, and I saw other articles yesterday about police drills federally funded to take on disgruntled veterans and gun owners. Now, regular listeners know this is nothing new. You know, the New York Times 4 years ago, 3 years ago, scouts trained to take on terrorists and more as they trained to take guns and kill veterans. And the Homeland Security documents saying returning veterans are the #1 enemy. Gun owners, conservatives, libertarians, constitutionalists, Ron Paul in the fetters. We've known this was behind the scenes in the documents for at least the last 4 years. It was going on before that, but it accelerated under Obama. Now I've had a chance yesterday and last night and this morning to read the executive orders, to really drill into it, and it confirms everything they've tried to push before all at once, hitting us from over 100 angles. 23 executive orders, a bunch of legislation, a bunch of other actions. They are creating, well, they've created the giant Stasi spy force in the name of fighting al-Qaeda. Now they say, don't worry about al-Qaeda. They're actually good guys. Our government's using them in Libya and Syria. That's in the news. And they're flipping the whole thing. Now, people remember articles we wrote years ago saying white al-Qaeda will be announced because we got the new training manuals and we saw the new training videos where every terrorist is a white person being, quote, reported by a minority. And now the initial scripts are out on 4 new TV shows, Founding Fathers and others, where it's all white racist with guns and minorities taking them down. So it's a government-organized attempt to push a kind of race war type deal where it's the minorities in the government teamed up against, quote, whites. And that's why you see them on Fox Sports saying all gun owners are racist Klan members. That's why you see Bob Schaefer on CBS saying we've got to have a World War II operation against gun owners like they're Hitler. Folks, you heard the clip. That's why you're hearing that we murdered the children at Sandy Hook. This is a purge of libertarians and conservatives. I'm not saying this for effect. The evidence is incontrovertible. It is an over-the-top situation. They are definitely going to stage false flags and come after us. I already knew this was happening last year when 4 TV shows were in development, all green-lighted now to start airing this year, where gun owners are racist murderers. So they're now going to say gun owning is a white thing. And people say, well, that doesn't make any sense. They don't care. This is how communists have taken down other countries. And the banks are using the communist playbook. It doesn't mean they're communists. They use communism at the grassroots with fascism on top of it. So, you know, I saw Steve Watson's article. I saw Kurt Nemo's article. I saw them, and they're good articles, but they don't explain, folks, it's now happening. Everything we warned about, everything we talked about. Now it's not going to be the TSA is going to be on the highways to stop al-Qaeda. It's now going to be, and it's already started, gun checkpoint. It's going to be harassment of gun owners. It's going to be saying we're mentally ill. They're already doing this. They're already now have new gun questionnaires coming out at the state levels that say, are you a conspiracy theorist? Do you believe in a new world order? You can't have a gun. And if conservatives give into this and go, well, I better just shut up or it'll take my guns, now they have the chilling effect. This is what authoritarians have always done. Notice the world government's not denied now. It's admitted. And they're saying you're a terrorist if you don't accept it. The mainstream media, the government, all of it, is an occupying force We still have talk radio. We still have a lot of the states. People are fighting back. But, Paul, it is so over the top. So over the top. And I'm standing on top of Mesa. I hope I'm coming through to you clearly. I'm up here hiking. Can you hear me, Paul?
Yeah, loud and clear.
Okay, good. I climbed on top of a mountain, literally, a small mountain, so I could get cell range. There's no cell out here where I'm at, hiking with my family. So this is what it comes down to, ladies and gentlemen, is that we are in deep emergency trouble. Everything we've talked about is coming true. I'm not happy about that. I'm not happy now that people all over the country are saying Alex Jones is the leader of the resistance, Alex Jones, this and that. But I am happy that we at least got the word out beforehand so we've got a chance to beat these people. But I'm not happy it got this far. This is not fun. This is real, folks. This is real. And if mainline conservative talk show hosts won't realize how much trouble we're in and get hardcore now, it's over. Notice they preconditioned us before all this happened. There's no world government. Nobody wants your guns. The Federal Reserve isn't private. Oh, none of this is going to happen. There won't be any carbon taxes. And now they're just doing it all. It is now all happening en masse. I'm going to let you get back to the broadcast. The good news is, as you pointed out, there's more than 30 million views, 10 million on one video alone on YouTube about Sandy Hook hoaxes. I haven't even gotten into the hoax. I think it smells to high heaven. I don't know how deep it goes. I know they staged the Batman thing. Even Larry Pratt says it has evidence of that. We know they staged Fast and Furious. They could stage anything. Put nothing past them. But the fact that, and that's conservative when I say 30 million views. I mean, one video's got like 11 million. One's got 10 million. I mean, in fact, the only time I lie is I underestimate because I don't want to say the truth. There's like 100 million views from what I've seen. Okay, I said 30, that was wrong. Okay, it's like 100 million views of people saying they don't buy Sandy Hook. The media is panicking. No one believes them anymore. That's why they're moving. They're not trying to take over because they're strong. They're trying to take over because they are weak. They're trying to take over because they know the people are waking up. So black, white, Hispanic, old, young, north, south, east, west, we have been taken over. Obama got the taxes raised on poor people. Obama promised not to come after the guns. Obama promised all this stuff. The Republicans are going to go along with total open borders to gut the country. Everything's about to happen this year. That's why they're trying to mobilize their minions and dumb down soccer moms to go after our guns. We have to get back in their face and say, how dare you compare gun owners to Nazi Germany and the government has to have a war against them? How dare you call us Klan? How dare you say we're criminals? How dare you say we killed those kids? How dare you try to put that guilt on us? They are branding us. Here's the key. I'm going to get off. We are being branded as the terrorists right now. We are being branded. We are being branded. We are being branded. The secret program that I discovered years ago that we forced out to go public from our law enforcement sources that are patriots is now going public. They are going ahead with saying gun owners and conservatives are terrorists and that we're not going to be able to own guns. This is a Soviet-style purge like the Reds did to the White Russians in 1917. Ladies and gentlemen, they are declaring a concerted Homeland Security program of harassment and intimidation against gun owners. Obama must be impeached now. He is an absolute criminal, and you must call every member of Congress and let them know that you're fully aware of what's happening because they know they've all committed crimes and insider trading. They know that they're bringing the country down. They know they're imploding the derivatives. They know they've brought in the New World Order. They know they've done all of this, and so they want to lock us up, the opposition to their criminal activities. They want to say that real Americans who know what's happening are terrorists. This is so outrageous. We have to use their leap, their power grab to boomerang back on them. They are going for everything right now. They have overreached. But if we don't respond, they are going to win. I'm telling you, folks, they're going to come and arrest you. They're going to take your property. Even if you've never fought for liberty and you've got property or a business owner, they're going to take everything you've got. They want a hot, quick takeover of America. Look how much has happened. The Obamacare, the bankruptcy, the NAFTA, the GATT, the Chinese owning our debt, the Chinese government saying they want our guns turned in a month ago, the UN treaty, the UN running our military. Folks, you ain't seen nothing yet. We are being declared terrorists on television right now. They are saying gun owners are the Nazis, like of World War II, and the government can take us out. This is outrageous. They are now branding us as terrorists worldwide. We are being branded to be hunted down and arrested. Paul Watson, the magnitude of this is literally off the charts. What do you say?
Well, it's downright creepy, isn't it? Because everybody's been asking, well, if they get the assault weapons ban through, how are they going to enforce it? How are they going to confiscate these weapons? And Big Sis, DHS, has announced that they're going to help expand and prioritize the See Something, Say Something campaign with the express purpose of aiding Obama's gun control. So what does that mean?
It was always set up for that. It was. I'm going to get off and let you continue with the articles. We need to repost Kurt Nemo's article where the bill is introduced, where they make you turn your guns in and then you get a tax credit for it on your taxes. Folks, it's happening. She's announcing that we're the terrorist. In the training videos, every single person is white. I mean, folks, it is on. All you guys that said give our liberties up because of Al-Qaeda, you have been fooled. Just like the Obama suckers that thought he was going to cut their taxes. Paul, go over all the articles. Everybody, get them at Infowars.com, PrisonPlanet.com. Get them out to everybody. Ladies and gentlemen, this is it. And they are going to butcher everything else. They're going to take the pension funds. They're going to gut everything. Paul Watson, big show coming up today with you and Mike Adams, is going to sit in for half the show coming up. God bless you all. Ladies and gentlemen, this is it. Toe-to-toe with the New World Order. God bless you.
There goes Alex Jones. And I mean, this is an agency, the DHS, let's not forget, that put out a report last year, funded a report that said Americans, quote, reverential of liberty and Americans suspicious of centralized authority were basically terrorists. They lumped them in with a bunch of hate groups, racist Klan members, and terrorist organizations, and said that Americans who held those viewpoints were in the same league. I mean, this is an agency that's put out PSAs for the past 3 or 4 years, whereas Alex said every terrorist portrayed as white, middle-class American. That's who they're targeting. And we'll be back after the break with Professor James Tracy. Stay tuned. Back on the Alex Jones Show, Paul Joseph Watson filling in for Alex Jones. Mike Adams coming up in the second half of the show. Top story on Drudge Report right now. TSA to remove controversial X-ray scanners. This is out of the Associated Press. Transportation Security Administration confirms that it is getting rid of airport body scanners that produce a naked image of travelers. So that's kind of a partial victory. Of course, they're still going to use the ones that, quote, unzip your DNA, but apparently now completely phasing out the X-ray body scanners, of course, as a result of numerous controversies over the past several years, led in no small part by drudgereport.com and Infowars.com. So that is a victory on that front. Of course, before the break, you heard Alex. He was talking about this new report out of Portsmouth, Ohio, which is up on Infowars.com. Drill characterizes disgruntled Second Amendment advocates as terrorists. And basically, they had a safety security exercise involving the police, National Guard, and local emergency responders there in Portsmouth, Ohio. And the terrorists in this drill were portrayed as, quote, 2 school employees who are disgruntled over the government's interpretation of the Second Amendment. And in this scenario, they had these pro-gun rights people building weapons of mass destruction, killing teachers, and using, biological agents against the local community. So they're basically going full lockstep now, demonizing Second Amendment advocates amidst this national debate on gun control. So that story is up right now at Infowars.com. Well, I'm delighted to be joined now by Professor James Tracy, PhD from Florida Atlantic University. He's a tenured communications professor, and he also teaches a class entitled Culture of Conspiracy. He's also involved with Project Censored, and his website is memoryholeblog.com. Professor, welcome to the show.
It's great to be here, Paul. Thank you.
Now, before we get into Sandy Hook, obviously we're going to go in detail on that. I want to talk about basically the onslaught you've received over the past week by the mainstream media, and particularly CNN. As I mentioned earlier, Anderson Cooper literally devoted half of his show last week to attacking Professor Tracy, and then he had another 10-minute segment just a couple of days ago doing the same thing. Basically, as far as I saw it, he was trying to get Professor Tracy fired from his position there at the university. So Professor, I mean, CNN could have easily just ignored all this. Why do you think they've attacked you so vigorously for asking questions about Sandy Hook?
I think basically to bring me into the news frame and to personalize this between myself and the families of Newtown. It has nothing to do with that. I was bringing up questions that were not raised, that were not addressed by the media. Anderson Cooper is someone who says he's keeping them honest. Well, who's he keeping honest? The poor parents about their grief, or is he keeping people honest, the authorities and so forth there that have dropped the ball with regard to the investigation, or perhaps even covered something up? They contacted me last Friday. I was frankly somewhat exhausted from the entire week after this. The story went viral. Drudge picked it up on Tuesday. And I spoke with my family members and my wife, and she didn't really want me to go on the show. And so I declined from doing so, and they were very persistent. They, in fact, actually sent their reporter out here who went to my place of employment and then filmed out in my front lawn, pretty much. I was not even aware of that, but he did call and say that he was around the corner. He was a couple blocks away, I guess, wanted me to come out. And I said, look, I'm really not into it. I'm tired. I will consider it in the future. I will provide a statement to you. I provided an email statement. Took me an hour or so to compose. They used a snippet of it or two on the air, and that was it. But other than that, it was really an attack. I was really rather taken aback by the extent of it. They contacted me again earlier this week, and on Monday I said, well, I will consider it. On Tuesday, they said, well, it's time. Do you want to go ahead and do it? And they wanted to get me down to the studio right away, and I said, I've got to teach this evening. I really don't have the time, but I will consider doing it. I've contacted them again, and they've not responded.
So you're perfectly willing to go on there. You've contacted them, and now they've basically stopped talking to you. Is that the case?
That's the case, yes.
So maybe, maybe they've dropped the story. I mean, I watched the clip, the 20-minute thing where Cooper's demonizing you, and it seems obviously he's using, you're insulting the victims as his platform for what he's saying. But he also seemed just as annoyed about the fact that you were questioning whether or not the mainstream media did its job in the first days after the event. So we'll go more into that. We'll talk about Sandy Hook after the break. Stay tuned. This is The Alex Jones Show. We'll be right back. Infowars.com. It's Paul Joseph Watson in for Alex Jones. We're talking to Professor James Tracy about the Sandy Hook massacre. He's a professor who's caused no end of controversy over the past week because he's been heavily demonized by the likes of CNN and Fox News. There's a video on YouTube which came to my attention about a week ago. It's only been posted for about 10, 11 days. It's called The Sandy Hook Shooting Fully Exposed. 10.6 million plus people have watched this video in the space of the last 10, 11 days alone. That shows you how voracious the interest is in this whole Sandy Hook issue. And I mean, I'm coming at it from a perspective of there are lots of unanswered questions. I don't buy into the notion that this never happened or that the parents, the family members involved were actors in some sense, which some people have claimed. I think it was a real tragedy. It really happened, but there are plenty of unanswered questions that go along with it that suggest more people than the accused shooter, Adam Lanza, may have been involved. So we're going to get into that now with Professor James Tracy. So, Professor, the Obama administration has built its entire gun control move on the notion that Adam Lanza shot these children with an AR-15 assault rifle. They're trying to ban the assault rifles now. Given that, wouldn't it be the perfect poster child to actually have even a still image from a surveillance camera of Adam Lanza with this AR-15 assault rifle, when in reality we've seen nothing, no surveillance footage, no still images of the shooter, when in past, mass shootings, school shootings, images of the shooter, thinking about Columbine, Virginia Tech, have emerged within days. But of Adam Lanza, we've seen absolutely nothing. Is that one of the questions that you've been talking about?
It's a central question, Paul. The Sandy Hook School District installed a new security system in September. Now, this is a very affluent community, and they would not have cut corners in terms of video surveillance and the ability to be able to store that video that's taken. So there's a glaring problem here with regard to what is actually going on. Where is that video footage? I think we can safely conclude that there was video footage captured, but where is it now? One scenario is that the one individual or team of individuals went in and went to the main office and may have turned off the video surveillance. But we've not heard from the officials whether or not that is in fact the case. If it was Adam Lanza, would he have had the foresight and sophistication to be able to pull something like that off? If it was a crew, a team of shooters, that may have in fact been the case. That's the only thing that I've heard about possibly explaining why there might not be video surveillance, other than them just holding back on it and attempting to, for example, doctor it. That's something I believe that Mike Adams had a piece a couple of days ago about, where is the surveillance footage? It's a very big question, because if they want to put a lot of our queries to rest, they could release that. We could see Lanza committing the crimes, and that would be the end of it. Another thing that might point to is that handguns were used, because those were what the initial reports stated. In fact, NBC News confirmed the reports from state and federal officials that there were 4 handguns used. This was on the morning of December 15th, Pete Williams on the NBC Today show. That was changed on the afternoon of December 15th by the Connecticut medical examiner H. Wayne Carver to being the AR-15, solely the AR-15 that was used. That was at the press conference at about 3:30 p.m. on December 15th.
And we had reports that the actual assault rifle was left in the vehicle, but then the video showed the police removing what looked like a shotgun out of the trunk of the vehicle. So do we know, have we pinned down exactly what's going on with the specific weapons that were used, or is that still contradictory?
I think that it's still contradictory. The footage looks as if it was a shotgun, but altogether there were, I believe, there were at least 6 weapons, or 7 weapons, if you include at one point or another that somehow materialize on the scene and then disappear. There are the 4 pistols. There's the AR-15, and then there are 2 Enfield rifles that are referenced at one point or another in the reportage. So we've got a total of, I believe, at least 7 weapons that are mentioned, that are pointed to by officials in journalistic reports, and then somehow disappear. And then we are down to the 1 weapon, the AR-15, which we might, at the very least, surmise that this is what was one of the things, one of the weapons that looks the most dangerous, and the one that might be targeted in legislation and executive orders.
Now we've got these reports of 2 men in the woods. Obviously, we've all seen the footage of them being apprehended in the woods. One has been explained as a parent who went to the school to help his son bake, I think it was gingerbread men or something. That's kind of been explained. He said he heard the gunshots, he was petrified, he ran away. There was another report of a separate man in the woods, though, and it emerged in a Newtown B report. Quote, a man with a gun who was spotted in the woods. So this is a guy with a gun around a school massacre. A man with a gun who was spotted in the woods near the school on the day of the incident was an off-duty tactical squad police officer from another town. So why is a guy who's a police officer from another town in the woods outside where a massacre's taking place with a gun? I mean, is that a place where people would go hunting right next to a school? So, Professor, just tell us about the reports of additional individuals that may have been involved in this event.
Well, the footage, the aerial footage that is taken by the Associated Press shows at least 1 figure fleeing the scene being pursued by police officers. So if there was someone up in the woods they must have come back down and then been chased back up into the woods. At one point, about a week or so ago, J. Paul Vance, the Connecticut State Police Lieutenant, said that the individual up in the woods was just chopping wood, just happened to be there chopping wood. Well, maybe they came down to the school and got a drink of water or something and then went back up there. That footage also shows, you can see someone in the upper left-hand portion of the video footage, someone who emerges behind a tree, and they remain unaccounted for, so apparently they escaped. But of course, as you know, there's also the CBS footage of a bystander who remarks that this individual was paraded by them and said to them, the onlookers, that I didn't do it, and then they took the individual and put them in the front seat of the patrol car. I'm very skeptical of accepting the Newtown Bee for as a valid source for information after the really contradictory reports initially from December 14th. First of all, quoting the principal, Dawn Hawksprung, and then retracting that and never saying who actually was that they spoke to. So I'm really very suspicious of that particular medium. And then apparently the individual that was spotted in the parking lot was a parent. That as well, I've not really seen anything that would confirm that. I know that is out there. But this was an individual that was spotted by a student who was being interviewed, who had experienced the evacuation of the building, and I believe that would have been the alleged parent that somehow fled onto the scene all of a sudden. There are also questions with regard to the alleged photograph of the evacuation of the 15 or 16 students that were being evacuated that really did make the national and international news. That was supposedly taken by one of the Newtown Bee associate editors as she came onto the scene in the back of the first responders. And she said that she was taking photographs left and right, and yet only 2 photographs emerged from that series of photos. So there's this conflicting information as well with regard to the additional suspects on the scene, but we've not really been given any conclusive evidence as to, as far as I'm concerned, really, as to who they were and what they were doing there, and whether or not they may have been accessories in the crime.
Yeah, there are a lot of questions about the lack of children, the lack of parents, the lack of teachers being seen in the actual surrounding area after the massacres happened. Of course, the school was on lockdown for a time, but then everybody was evacuated. Mm-hmm. I was thinking maybe that's only because the mass media showed up quite a while later after everybody had already been evacuated.
Mm-hmm. That may have been the case. If you note the school shooting at Taft Union High School out by Bakersfield, there was media on the scene there, and that's a school comparable in student body to the Newtown, to Sandy Hook. There are about 850, 900 students there, and there's a very evident evacuation taking place there where the sidewalks are flooded with students. But we see none of that in Newtown, and where the students would have converged over at the fire hall, the fire station, there's a limited degree of activity there as well. So some of these things also made me suspicious. Exactly what is going on here? Is this an event that is in some way, shape, or form being embellished? Because I think that something took place there as well, but I'm wondering as to what degree it may be somewhat fortified, if you will.
And also, there were these bizarre reports of people dressed as nuns fleeing the scene in a purple van, and then we've got this photograph of these black veils being found near the scene on the ground. Did you hear about that report?
Well, yeah, I believe, in fact, that it was someone who was calling the Alex Jones show on the morning of the incident that reported this initially, and that's the first time that it emerged really on the news. And there was also an article on the Intel Hub that delves into this to some degree. In fact, I believe there was a photograph taken of these individuals, and they're wearing footwear similar to what police officers would wear.
Yeah, I actually saw that photo earlier today. It's definitely bizarre. But I mean, yeah. The problem we've got is, you know, amidst all these legitimate questions about the narrative, you know, what happened, who was involved, there's a plethora of claims that are obviously either completely baseless or are, you know, woefully reductionist. And I think the whole thing about Emily Parker supposedly not being killed and then being included in that photo with Obama is clearly one of them, because if you look at the high-res images, you can quite clearly prove that it is in fact her sister, who obviously wasn't one of the victims. So, I mean, what do you say to the idea that, you know, some people are really making huge leaps of logic and in doing so are detracting from any real understanding of what happened? Because I've seen some really just crazy things, like, you know, Robbie Parker, one of the parents, is actually Tony Hawk, the skateboard guy. So there's a lot of people poisoning the well with bizarre craziness, and it's really not helping us understand what actually happened, is it?
Well, I've seen a lot of activity on my blog as well, the comments and things of the like, and I think that there is definitely a program to sow misinformation into the stream of information in order to muddy the waters, and in the process discredit the research, really the research that independent researchers and the like are putting together, and alternative media, because if you can discredit it or muddy the waters to a limited degree in one area, you can paint with a fairly broad brush. The mainstream corporate media can do that. So I'm not very surprised if things like that are being spread. I'm also somewhat suspicious of the some of the web pages, or some of, for example, a Facebook page that is created a few days ahead of time. These are very curious phenomena. I know less about the mechanics of Facebook and the extent to which dates can be changed to really draw any conclusions with regard to that. And it's somewhat one has to be careful as well.
Well, I mean, that is interesting, but for me, it's not proof of anything, because you can create a Facebook page and then rename it to something else. So the original timestamp on the Facebook page will say, you know, for example, December 10th, and then you rename it to something else later on. Also, obviously, I work in, you know, web publishing, and you can change a timestamp as easy as anything. So, I mean, that, for me, that's, you know, it's quite bizarre, like a lot of the other stuff, but it's not really proof of anything. We're going to get back into the details shortly. I just want to get your take on this. Louise Tambaschio, who was a family friend of the Lanzas, told 60 Minutes, quote, "I know he was on medication. Professor, why over a month later do we not know anything about what psychiatric drugs Adam Lanza was on?"
Well, I think that this is a very valid question that journalists such as John Rappaport have asserted. Why is it that we don't know what his physician's name is, if he was in fact under psychiatric care or the equivalent, and what types of drugs he may have been on? There's a drug that I've never heard of called, I believe, Tamaft, that he was supposedly on. But again, there's a limited amount of information that's been disclosed by authorities or otherwise.
There was actually talking about disinformation, there was an individual who claimed to be Lanza's uncle who was circulating around the media a few weeks ago now, and he actually put out the name of the drug that Lanza was supposedly on. A bunch of publications ran with it, including New York Magazine, I think, and it was complete disinfo. It was completely made up. So again, another example of how people are poisoning the well to distract people from understanding what actually happened. But of course, it took nearly 6 months to get confirmation that James Holmes was on psychiatric drugs, but we still don't know exactly which ones. So again, as you said, I mean, these SSRIs are the elephant in the living room, aren't they? Because while the media will talk about, you know, video games and things like that, they won't address the psychiatric drugs that are prevalent amongst almost all of these mass shooters throughout the last 20 years.
Well, actually, Sanjay Gupta did a piece on CNN.
We'll talk about it after the break. Got to leave it there for now. We'll be back. Stay tuned. It's Paul Joseph Watson back on the Alex Jones Show, filling in for Alex. Mike Adams will be here in the second half of the show to take you to the end of the broadcast. But right now we're talking to Professor James Tracy of Florida Atlantic University. He's controversially questioned the official narrative behind the Sandy Hook school shooting, and he's been demonized and attacked by the likes of CNN and Fox News for doing so. I'm going to take your calls for the professor coming up shortly at 800-259-9231. That's 800-259-9231. We were talking about some of the disinformation that gets mixed into all these questions, which kind of poisons the well. And obviously, I believe that this was a horrible tragedy for all the parents involved. And I believe that some of the people who are asking questions about this, not the professor, but a lot of people on YouTube, have handled it in a rather insensitive way. Of course, we've had reports about them harassing some of the people who were involved. And basically, it doesn't do us any favors. So we need to treat it, obviously, with extreme caution because it's a very traumatic event. And I think one of the aspects of this, which a lot of people have claimed, Professor, is this whole idea that there were, quote, crisis actors who were working with the media to create a fake narrative surrounding this event. And this is where we probably differ, but just give us your take on the whole crisis actors angle. Explain what that is.
The Crisis Actors is a group based out of Denver, Colorado, I believe, and they work in association with the Department of Homeland Security on active shooter drills. So they are involved in playing the roles of bystanders, of perhaps the shooter himself, the victims in some cases. The individuals involved in posting things to social media. In other words, they are all-encompassing in creating an environment for a lifelike drill. You know, there was a drill that took place, by the way, along these lines. Now, I don't know if crisis actors were involved, but this was in a school for disabled children in Harlem, and the children were absolutely terrified. So in some cases, it's not known whether or not an event is actually taking place, but it's made more lifelike by the crisis actors. Again, I don't know if they were involved in that particular drill, and that's an incident that's sort of flown beyond the mainstream media radar. But these individuals they're deployed within the community, and they go ahead and they embellish the particular event. So if this were a drill that somehow went live, as we know that, for example, 9/11 and the 7/7/05 bombings were, then it would have involved actors along these lines, and they would not even know whether or not the drill itself went live. One of the things that made me question in this regard was looking at the video footage as well as the photographic evidence emerging from the scene. And as you had alluded to earlier, there were just there were few bystanders and the like. There were very few people actually being interviewed when you would think there would be a great many people on the scene. Now, maybe what you say is correct. Maybe the media got there late, and there was no photographic or video evidence along those lines. There were just a few people that they could actually interview. But that's one of the reasons that I actually put that forth, the possibility of there being crisis actors. And I think it's probably been the most controversial.
Okay, we'll be back after the break. Stay there. Your calls for Professor Tracy coming up. It's the Alex Jones Show. Stay tuned. It's Paul Joseph Watson filling in for Alex Jones today. We're talking to Professor James Tracy of Florida Atlantic University. He's questioned the official narrative behind the Sandy Hook school massacre and basically been pursued by CNN as a result of it and other news organizations. We're going to go to your calls shortly. The number is 800-259-9231. That's 800-259-9231. Before the break, we were talking about the idea that some of these individuals involved in this event may have been actors or participants in a drill. Of course, we know that drills shadow both 9/11 and 7/7. And you have to frame all this while being sensitive to the fact that it was, according to my mind, a very real tragedy involving very real victims. But you have to frame it in the context that, under Fast and Furious, the Obama administration sent 2,000 assault weapons to drug lords in Mexico, resulting in the deaths of over 300 people, many of them children. So to claim that this would be beyond a government to stoop to such a level to kill 20 kids to ram through their political agenda is somewhat naive, given what we've seen historically with the likes of Operation Gladio and other false flag terror programs, which are on the record, all admitted. They've been subject to parliamentary investigations in countries like Italy, admitted that governments stage mass shootings, they stage bombings, they bomb trains for their own political agenda. So asking questions about an event that has been the fulcrum of the Obama administration's agenda on gun control is only sensible, while of course maintaining that respect, that dignity, that sensitivity for the victims. But what sprung to my mind before the break is, Professor, straight after the collapse of the Twin Towers on 9/11, we had people on the ground who seemed to know bizarrely intricate details of how that collapse happened, which just happened to then morph almost immediately into the official story. So I guess that's what you're talking about when you're talking about actors being involved. You're not saying there were no victims. You're just saying that people may have been there to massage the narrative. Is that correct?
Yes, that's correct, Paul. I am simply posing questions. And I never said anything declarative in any of my articles about this happened. I was saying, could this be a possibility? And yet the media took that and ran with it. Took my assertion as an allegation when it was merely a question. And that, unfortunately, is how this has been framed, and how I think that it's been offensive to especially to the people that lost their loved ones up there in Newtown. I never actually intended that in any way, shape, or form. But certainly, yes, what you point out with regard to 9/11 is really right on, in that this idea that a steel frame building could collapse as a result of the heat from the airplanes, I think is something that was put out there at the time to sort of deflect any questioning as to how could this have actually taken place, these buildings going down in such a way in their own footprint.
Just got a minute to go to the break. We're going to go to your callers, the first of which is Adam. We'll go to him after the break. Other aspects that I want to get into, obviously, we've got things about Adam Lanza's car, a picture with all 4 doors open. Why would that be the case if he was just exiting the car on his own? As you mentioned earlier, the school principal gives a quote to the Newtown Bee describing the attack, but she's actually the first victim of the attack. That's another inconsistency that hasn't been explained. We'll go into it and more with your calls, Professor Tracy, after the break. This is the Alex Jones Show, Infowars.com. Stay tuned. We'll be right back. Paul Joseph Watson, writer with Infowars.com, filling in for Alex today. Got a headline up on prisonplanet.com. Holder begs court stop document release on Fast and Furious. Basically, they're trying to stop a lawsuit brought by Judicial Watch, asking them to open records relating to Operation Fast and Furious, which of course was the program which many view as a deliberate effort to undermine the Second Amendment, where the Obama administration sent 2,000 assault weapons to drug lords in Mexico, leading to the deaths of 300 people. So if you think it's beyond the Obama administration to engage in murder to further their gun control agenda, remembering the fact that it was Obama himself back in April 2011 who told Sarah Brady in a White House meeting he was working, quote, under the radar to sneak attack the Second Amendment, then we'd be very naive to think that they wouldn't engage in such activity. We're talking to Professor James Tracy about the Sandy Hook massacre, the questions that he's raised about the event and subsequently being attacked by the media for asking. Adam in Canada, you're on the air. Go ahead, Adam.
Yeah, kudos for having the courage to cover this. I have a couple questions.
Go ahead.
Yeah, I think it's great that he got the thing about the shotgun in the trunk right, and the dress with the daughter. Those are. But what I haven't heard, what I'd like to hear him talk about is the question of whether or not that was Adam Lanza's car, and also if you've seen some of the rebranding of businesses in the area. If you go to sandyhookhairco.com, Sandy Hook Hair Company, and see their whole image, the bloody handprint and the white heart in the palm. And finally, of course, the whole thing about the Batman map in the movie, the Batman movie having Sandy Hook on it, and also actually lining up to the roads in Newton with a circle on the school, which is the stadium that's attacked in the movie.
Go ahead, Professor.
Okay, well, there's quite a bit there. First, with regard to Adam Lanza's car, this was apparently registered to a Chris Rodia. And yet there was an article that came out arguing that this was not the case. I think it was in a Hearst paper that it was not. It was the car was not registered to him, but in fact it turns out that it was, and that Rodia, he had a number of. He had a number of run-ins with the law. He had been involved apparently in drug running and the like. So that's as much as I know with regard to the automobile. What were the other questions? Well, there's these crazy rebranding of businesses with Illuminati symbology. I mean, it's totally out there. But go to sandyhookhairco.com and you'll see their website with the bloody red handprint and the all-seeing white heart in the palm. And then, of course, the whole Batman map, Sandy Hook. You go to YouTube, Batman map, Sandy Hook, a strange comparison, you'll see this 1-minute video.
I've seen that, Professor, but I mean, there's a place, obviously Gotham City is based on New York City, and there's a place in New York City called Sandy Hook. That's how I understood it. Yeah, and that does come up, but I think 1 hour and 58 minutes into the Dark Knight Rises, there's that specifically on the map, from what I understand. I haven't seen the movie in its entirety, and somehow I saw that on my blog just recently. Someone putting something in there with regard to the hair salon or the hair company, but I've not seen the imagery itself. So I can't really comment on that. Okay, thanks for the call, Adam. Yeah, I think the thing with the car was how I read it, it was like a bleed in the police transmission tapes where he had been apprehended in a completely different city, and that bled through to their transmission, which is why it got confused with Adam Lanza. That's how it was explained. Whether that's true or not, I don't know. But
yeah, it was explained in a mainstream media outlet that he was mistaken, but whether or not that is in fact the case is still somewhat questionable.
Right.
So, but it's a very good question.
And the other stuff doesn't really, I mean, it's all very weird, but it doesn't prove anything for me. Father James in California, you're on the air. Go ahead.
Good morning. It's good to talk to you, and I've been a listener of the show for probably about a year, and initially thought that Alex was rather paranoid until I began researching everything that he was talking about and finding so much supporting information. You know, I have family members that are educators. My father served in special forces in Vietnam, and the kind of false flag attack is something that, you know, I've heard about from him. You know, in Vietnam, he said it was a common tactic for them to go into a Vietnamese village, do attacks, leave evidence of it being North Vietnamese or Viet Cong, then come in subsequent days to respond to their outrage and recruit them and train them to fight against the North Vietnamese. So, you know, it's a tactic that's been around for a long time. And thinking about these questions, you know, my thoughts have been that, you know, the conversation in the media, especially as it's put out by the government, is, you know, how many lives will we save by banning guns? And I think the question really needs to be turned around. You know, how many lives are we going to sacrifice if we limit or restrict guns from law-abiding citizens? And I think a very practical way to arm our teachers. You know, we have a lot of police chiefs and sheriffs that are standing up now saying that they're going to defend Second Amendment rights. A very simple approach would be for them to issue conceal and carry permits to teachers, and then to overcome the ban for guns in school is to deputize them. You know, sheriffs, police chiefs can deputize citizens in service, so they can train them, license them, deputize them, and it'll be legal for those teachers to have a firearm concealed on campus.
Well, Professor, I mean, would you feel safer if your kids were in a school where you knew the teacher had a safely locked away gun in the event of some crazed killer coming into the school? I mean, would you feel safer?
Well, I certainly know that individuals such as Barack Obama, his children go to a school that is safe and secure in that regard, and has armed guards. I think that's likely the case with many of the country's elite and the elite of the world. Most of their children go to facilities, go to institutions that have that type of security. So why shouldn't the broader public?
And of course, Obama just signed the bill where he gets lifetime armed Secret Service protection, while all the rest of you lowly peasant American citizens are disarmed. Jacob in Illinois, you're on the air, Jacob. Go ahead.
Oh, hi. Been a listener for a couple of days now. I like the show. I was wondering, what kind of gun was it again that the kids were killed with? Like a big rifle or something? I was just wondering, how did he get it into the school in the first place?
Well, Professor, that's what the medical examiner addressed, isn't it, if you want to cover it from that angle?
Yeah, this came up. This is when the story was significantly altered during that press conference. From as far as I can tell, from the four handguns, which is what was being reported at 8 o'clock or 8:30 a.m. on the NBC Today show, to the single AR-15. And during that press conference, and it's important to really look at that press conference because I think that's really the most revealing piece of evidence and information in this case, is that the weapon is almost changed immediately from the pistols to the AR-15, and even a reporter speaks up and says, but the rifle was found in the car. And at that point, the Connecticut State Police Lieutenant Vance said, "That's not correct, sir. That's not correct." So it's at that point where things change. How he got the weapon into the school? Well, he approached according to the official story, he approached the entrance of the school and he shot out the front door and with a hole big enough to enter. Yet we've not seen any video evidence that in fact took place, nor has there been any video or photographic evidence of the door itself, the entry point itself.
Oh, thanks for the call, Jacob. Josh in California, you're on the air with Professor Tracy. Go ahead. All right, Josh has dropped. Professor, tell us about this pejorative term conspiracy theory you wanted to talk about, the dynamics between how that's being used by the establishment media in relation to this event.
Well, I think that as an academic, and I think this is also the case with regard to journalists, they fear being called a conspiracy theorist. That is the pejorative that's being used against me to make an example out of me, to threaten my job, to get me to be quiet, to not ask questions. It's important to think about how this term originated, how actually it developed. There's an important book called Conspiracy Theory in America that's coming out in April of this year by a colleague of mine, Lance DeHaven Smith, up at Florida State University. Now, he helped to devise the concept of state crimes against democracy. This is something that's...
We'll be back. Final segment. We'll finish that after the break. Stay tuned. Alex Jones Show, Infowars.com.
2012.
We're back on the Alex Jones Show. Paul Joseph Watson filling in for Alex, talking with Professor James Tracy of Florida Atlantic University. Professor, just finish up your thought there quickly about the term conspiracy theory.
Yeah, in the mid-1960s, Paul, the U.S. government and the Central Intelligence Agency were concerned with regard to criticisms of the Warren Report. So they issued a dispatch to all of their offices, and this dispatch right here, it's number 1035-960. It's available at the JFK Lancer website. Talks about how. Can I read a bit of this? Is that okay?
Yeah, we're pushed for time, but yeah, quickly.
Okay, well, it talks about how public opinion is almost 50% skeptical of the official conclusions of the Warren Commission report, and talks further about employing propaganda assets to negate and refute the attacks of the critics. Talks specifically about conspiracy theories and the specific techniques that one could use in CIA asset publications and by CIA assets themselves in the media industry to essentially subdue any sort of criticism. And so what I'm getting at in that regard, and you could again go to the JFK Lancer site and read it since we're pressed for time, but I believe it's a key document because this is something that has in many ways really created fear among journalists and among scholars to address anything that might be considered a conspiracy theory. I think I know this more intimately than anyone because I can sense that fear among others. You can't touch certain subjects such as 9/11 because you might be accused of this, and this is something that could cost you your job and/or your credibility.
Okay, Todd in Florida, quickly, please. Final call. Go ahead, Todd.
No, thanks for taking my call, guys. I got some points about Sandy Hook. Thanks so much for talking about it today. I think it's something we all need to question. You mentioned at the press conference, I feel that is some very important information. Paul Vance dodged blatantly a question when asked what was Nancy Lanza's connection to the school. And I believe that he couldn't answer that question because later it came out that she had no connection. However, there was a report on the scene from Sally Cox, the 15-year alleged nurse at Sandy Hook, who told a reporter that she knew
Nancy Lanza and that she was an experienced kindergarten teacher. I think we need to question those things very much. Are you also familiar? Are you also familiar with the fundraiser sites? The URLs were created before the event.
Yeah, we talked about that. We talked about that a bit earlier. I don't know if a medical examiner would actually have that information. What I would expect of him as a professional is to have information specific to the injuries, you know, the causes of death, the caliber of the bullets, how many girls, how many boys were slain. These things are just basic, and they were not addressed by Dr. Carver, not in any competent way. And that's really the major thing that contributes to my skepticism and caused my my initial questioning of the event.
Okay, thanks for the call, Todd. Professor, just tell people about your website, the other work you do there, how people can find out more information.
Yeah, memoryholeblog.com. I've had the website since March. There's a lot of stuff on there. You know, primarily there are essays that I've written on political criticism and events such as this. And things that might be regarded as conspiracies, but attempting to analyze those and develop those in a historical context and in a more contemporary context. So it's memoryholeblog.com.
Okay, Professor James Tracy, Florida Atlantic University. You won't be on CNN tonight then, but you may be on in the next few days.
Well, they've got to get back to me, and I'm willing to go on and keep them honest.
Okay, we really appreciate your time. Fascinating questions raised once again, and we hope to talk to you again soon. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Paul.
There goes Professor James Tracy raising questions about the Sandy Hook massacre. And again, this has gone completely viral. It even surprised me how crazy, insane the interest in this is. 10.6 million views on one video alone on YouTube that was created just 10, 11 days ago. And in fact, we're probably going to try and get the creators behind that video on the show. But tons of videos, tons of questions, while still trying to maintain respect, dignity, for the realization that this was a very real tragedy, but we'll continue to ask questions about it. Mike Adams coming up. This is the Alex Jones Show Live. I've been Paul Joseph Watson, Infowars.com. We'll be right back with Mike Adams. Stay tuned.
All right, we're back here on the Alex Jones Show, and this is Mike Adams stepping in for the next hour and a half here. I want to thank Paul Joseph Watson for his eye-opening interview there. I didn't catch all of it because I was obviously driving in to be here. But we've got even more great information coming up. This is just hard-hitting, day after day, hour after hour. Here's what we have coming up right now on the phone with us, and he'll be joining us in just a minute, is Representative Steve Toth from Texas, who is the person introducing the Firearms Protection Act that he was on the show, I think, 2 days ago here with Alex, and he's got more updates for us, and I have some new questions for him as well, so we'll get an update on that. We've also got, today I'm going to give you just a little commentary on Lance Armstrong and his now staged confession that he lied all along and that all the people that he bullied and threatened and intimidated were actually correct in saying that he doped. So I'll give you a little breakdown on that, but I'm not going to spend too much time on that because there's far more important things happening in this world than Lance Armstrong's career. We've got smart gun RFID technology now being discussed for firearms. This is part of Obama's 23 now famous or infamous executive orders, new ways to track firearms owners. And the New York PD is also even now suggesting that they should put RFID chips into your medication. That's what they want to track, is your drugs and your guns and your money, your cash, and probably everything else. Oh, it's getting crazy. In any case, let's go to Representative Steve Toth, who is on the line with us, and he joins us for an update. Mr. Toth, thank you for joining us once again here on the Alex Jones Show.
Hey, thanks so much, Mike. I appreciate it.
It's great to have you on. I heard your interview a couple of days ago. I'm very proud that you are the kind of person who represents the state of Texas. You're a business owner. You're a successful person in the private space, private industry. and you get it about the Second Amendment, about freedom. You're well-spoken, you're highly intelligent. I think your bill is going to be very successful. What is your read so far on the level of support for this Firearms Protection Act?
Well, think about this a second. There are two elements that are really critical for this bill going through. One is the people of the state of Texas, and the second is the lawmakers here in Austin. And we have all been shocked. I knew it was an issue. And it's not just about the Second Amendment. This is really more about the 10th Amendment than it is the Second Amendment. This is about preserving states' rights. This is about an executive order, an edict by a king, not having prominence over the legislative process that's laid out in both the Texas and U.S. Constitution.
Right.
And so where things are going really well with this legislation is out in the streets, in homes and businesses and restaurants all over Texas. People are talking about it. The problem is that there are going to be some competing bills that are more moderate. We don't need a moderate approach to a desperate problem that is facing America. We need a strong bill that has real teeth, that day one, when it goes into effect, the Obama administration is going to file an injunction in the Fifth Circuit probably to put a stop to it so that this gets challenged all the way to the Supreme Court.
And that's what we need. We need this 10th.
That is exactly what we need. And so if a moderate bill goes through without any teeth that they can just overlook and ignore, then that's what will happen. So there are a lot of different bills right now, but we need for people in the state of Texas to get behind the Firearms Protection Act, because that is the bill, that is the legislation that has the teeth in it that the Obama administration is going to force their hand.
Yes, but what is the actual composition of support in the Texas legislature for possibly being able to actually pass this? I mean, I know the Austin area representatives.
Here's the deal. We're going to get a bill through. No questions asked. We're going to get a bill through in response to what the president has done. The problem is that there are some more moderate bills that have come forward since this whole thing, since this media firestorm has erupted over the issue.
Yes.
There are some more moderate bills that have come forward that frankly are going to undermine what we're trying to do here.
When you say moderate, for example, your bill makes it a felony crime for a federal official to try to enforce an unconstitutional order in the state of Texas. Are you saying that, for example, that felony is not present in a less powerful bill?
It's not present in either bill. It almost looks more like a suggestion or a House resolution than it does a bill. I mean, you might as well just do a House resolution. Boy, we hate what Obama's, we need a bill that has real teeth in it. We need to draw a line in the sand and say enough. We're done.
Now, when this was attempted, drawing a line in the sand, I think roughly a year ago with the TSA
bill that David Simpson put through, exactly.
Yeah.
And, the thing about that bill is that it started too late. If it had started in January, like this one is, then that bill would have had what our bill has right now, which is it's got this broad base of support from people all over Texas.
Yeah.
I mean, my phone is being rung off the hook right now. We can't get to all the calls. It's impossible.
Well, I'm sure that's the case. I was in a gun shop just the other day, and I asked the owner, "Did you hear about Representative Toth's bill?" And they said, "Are you kidding me? Everybody that walks in our doors keeps telling us about it."
Yeah, I mean, it's really cool, and I don't know if I'm going to get on a faith track here for a second, but this has been so encouraging, and the Lord has so encouraged us over it, and I'll tell you why. Kendall Croker is a really great guy. He's the guy that started this thing in Wyoming, and I want to give him credit for it.
Yes.
Because Kendall's the one that started this whole thing. Well, what was really cool is our office got a call yesterday from Kendall's sister, and she said, of all the states that Kendall's sister could live in, what do you think the chances are that his sister out of 50 states just happens to live in Texas? And out of the 150 House districts across the state of Texas, what are the chances that I live in Steve's district.
Wow. She lives in District 15, huh?
She lives in my district. And she goes, we're behind you, and we're behind this legislation. You guys are trying to do it the right way. And we want the people in the state of Texas to get behind it, because if Abraham Lincoln said this, he said, if you don't have the people behind you, you can't do anything great.
Well,
I don't want to do something moderate. I want to do something great.
Yeah.
If you guys get fired up about it, and if you're willing to call your representatives and your senators about it, then we can get a strong bill through.
That is the message, and also because this is a national and even a global audience, this matters to all of you who are listening right now, no matter what state you live in the United States or even what country you live in, because if Texas can set the precedent to standing up to unconstitutional executive orders from the executive branch of the federal government, that sets a precedent that applies to all 50 states, right, Mr. Toth?
Yeah, I mean, think about this, folks. When you take your kid to the pediatrician, do you want the pediatrician saying to little Johnny, hey, does your mommy or daddy have a gun at home?
Right.
I mean, seriously, this is no different than how things were in Red China when they were turning kids against their parents. This is no different than how things were in the early days of Nazi Germany.
Or Stasi secret police under Mussolini or whatever. Yeah, you're right. It's the same kind of snitch society, reporting honest citizens to the feds to be disarmed or even jailed.
And that's part of this. Here's how he did things. When he got Obamacare through, it was this nebulous 3,700-page, we don't know what's in it until we pass it. We can't read it until we pass it. 3,700 pages of nebulous, innocuous stuff. Oh, don't worry about it. It's fuzzy, it's fluffy, it's cuddly. Don't worry about it. There are no sharp edges to it whatsoever. It gets passed, now it's 37,000 pages. The only thing worse than a politician that's been in Austin or Washington too long is an unelected bureaucrat that's been there too long. And they're the dangerous ones that will put words and that will put substance to these 23 actions that the president has handed out.
Yeah, that's right.
And folks, you better be worried about it.
Let me ask your opinion. Texas Attorney General Greg Abbott put out an ad recently in New York, and I love this, and I love what Mr. Abbott has done here. And this was written up in Reuters with the following title: "Y'all come to Texas," state official tells New York gun owners. It was a great ad by Mr. Abbott, or he helped organize it, to say that if you want to come to a state where you have more freedom and lower taxes and more liberties, come to Texas and bring your rifle and your ammunition. I thought it was fantastic. What are your thoughts on Mr. Abbott's actions in regard to that publicity?
I hit on that last night when I was on Hannity, and I had a very close friend of mine that saw the interview, and he said, if you'll get my resume, Margaret and I will pack our bags tomorrow. and here's the reality. It's not just like as the governor told Sean, you're not going to be 15% off better simply because there are no state income taxes. Our cost of living is 30% lower.
Yes.
So for those of you that aren't here yet, I grew up in upstate New York. I moved here in 1997 because I believed in my heart of hearts this is the best place to raise my family. And the people of Texas have welcomed us and made a home for us.
Yes.
And I'm just here to tell you, the quality of the living will be twice as good, and the cost of living will be a third of what you're paying anywhere else.
Absolutely. That's one of the reasons I'm here. And plus, I just love the liberty, and I am proud of being in Texas and knowing that Texas has people like you, Mr. Toth, and people like Mr. Abbott, who I hear has aims maybe for the governorship, which maybe he'd be the perfect person to do that down the road when that opportunity arises. But I am just proud to be in a state that says we have liberty here, and we're going to stand for it. We are going to stand up against tyranny. We're going to pass the laws that nullify unconstitutional orders. We are Texans, and we're not laying down for a bunch of tyrants. I love that attitude.
We've got, yeah, but we need to hear from all of you. And let the phones ring right now. Call General Abbott's office and let him know that you're going to get behind the Firearms Protection Act.
Yes.
Let him hear it. He needs to hear from you guys. They want to be about, this isn't a lack of leadership. They want to hear from the people. They need the people to be heard. They want to hear from you guys. Which one of these bills do you want? Something more moderate? they'll support something more moderate. But if they hear from the grassroots of Texas that they want a bill with teeth in it, then tell the Attorney General's office that you're going to stand behind the Firearms Protection Act, and you want him to as well, respectfully, because he's a good man.
Exactly, yeah, and that's the message. All of you out there who are tired of being oppressed and having your rights eroded by executive orders or the federal government in whatever way, and there's a lot of this happening in agriculture too, with the Food Safety Modernization Act that just hammers small farmers in Texas as well. I've even covered that.
Mike, can I share another one with you?
Yeah, sure, go ahead, please.
There is a terrible curriculum going through the schools today. It's called C-Scope. It is in 80% of the schools across the state of Texas. Parents are not allowed to view it. They're not allowed to go online to look at it. It's a portal online curriculum. Parents are not allowed to look at it. Teachers are forced to sign non-disclosure agreements about what's in it.
Really?
It's filled with Islam. It is the worst of the worst of the worst.
Where did this come from?
Well, it started with. Here's the problem: when you start a government agency, you can't kill it. So we have these education service centers in the state of Texas that 20, 30 years ago, when we were in school, and you wanted a film strip or you wanted a 16 millimeter movie, you would go to the education service center where they were, the vault basically for all the equipment and all these great films and slides and everything else. Well, we don't need that anymore because we have this thing called the internet and streaming video and audio and all that cool stuff. We get it over the internet.
Yeah.
So, like any good government agency, it became a solution in search of a problem. And so what they did was they came out with this thing called C-Scope. They spent millions of dollars of taxpayers' money on it. And it's not under the guise, it's not under the supervision, auspices of the State Board of Education. These liberals that are running it can basically say and do anything that they want without the approval of the State Board of Education, who are elected by we the people.
But you see, that's their attack point now, is to try to indoctrinate the next generation.
That's exactly what they're trying to do.
And with all these TV shows, too, that are coming out, I don't know how much you're aware of those, but this show about they hate Paul Revere and a show demonizing the Founding Fathers. And most of these shows...
Get this. Our founding... The Tea Party, the Boston Tea Party, they're referred to in C-Scope as terrorists.
Oh, man, yeah.
Terrorists.
Not surprising. Well, they're going for broke, Mr. Toth. They're going for broke.
This is Texas.
Yeah. They're trying to turn any person who just believes in the Constitution and the Founding Fathers into a total outright terrorist. I mean, that's right. It's now in our faces. There can no longer be any doubt. They're not beating around the bush, so to speak. They're going for your freedoms just outright.
Oh, man. Unbelievable.
So,
unbelievable.
Mr. Toth, let me ask you a question on a different track. What are you doing to protect your personal safety? And I mean this sincerely. I've been threatened before. Alex Jones obviously has been threatened many, many times. Are you taking steps to make sure that they don't put you in a situation that could compromise your integrity on spearheading this kind of bill? Well,
I mean, here's the deal. I live my life with a high degree of accountability. I live with my legislation director is a guy that I've known from church for years. I live with him and his wife in Austin.
Yes.
I don't live in an apartment by myself.
Good.
And Michael and his wife, Brittany, carry. They have CHLs. They both carry. My chief of staff carries. My office would be the worst office to come into in the Capitol if you want to inflict harm on someone.
Good. Right. Good. And plus, there's a lot of concealed carry patriots walking around that building as well. I know, because sometimes I'm one of them.
Yeah. And, that's just, hey, here's the deal. If we don't stand up, we have no future. We just don't. Our children will have no future. And that's what this is all about. This job only pays $600 a month. You're not going to get rich doing it. In fact, your business probably will end up taking a hit as a result of it.
Yeah, right.
But if we don't stand up, all of us, we've all got a part to play. Even if it's just calling the Attorney General and calling the governor and calling your state representative to say, get behind the Firearms Protection Act.
Absolutely, absolutely. You've got to get a website going where we can, publicize that URL and build momentum I'll even donate some software technology to you. By the way, I founded a software company many years ago. I'll donate that to your office so you can have an email list engine that works. I mean, you've got to get something going. We can just give it out on the air and get people to that website.
I'll have Amy get going on it today.
Yeah.
And, I mean, if there's anyone out there that can help us develop the website, that would be great, too.
All right. Well, thank you for joining us, Representative Toth. We're out of time, but God bless you.
Mike. You're awesome. Thanks.
Thank you. Take care. We'll be right back here on the Alex Jones Show. Stay with us. A lot more straight ahead. That was Representative Toth with the update on the Firearms Protection Act in the state of Texas. We're continuing here on the Alex Jones Show. Thank you for joining us. We just finished up an interview with Representative Steve Toth from the state of Texas and the Firearms Protection Act. And I want to reiterate why this matters to everybody across the nation and wherever you may be listening from. This is a precedent-setting bill, and it's based on the bill out of Wyoming, and the author of that bill deserves the credit. But the language of this bill can be shared with many other states, and there are lots of other states who would like to get on board and stand up to the federal government and say, enough is enough. We're not going to let our rights be trampled on any longer. Because look where this is going, folks. If you don't stand up to this, Second Amendment is not the end of this. They're going to come after your First Amendment. They're going to come after your Fifth Amendment even more than they have already. They're going to obliterate states' rights and basically say there shouldn't be any states whatsoever. And with the executive orders, Obama's going to be saying, well, we don't need Congress either. What's the point of having Congress when the president just writes law? This is the basis of the downfall of our free society, and it has already begun. We have already started to tumble down that pit of tyranny and oppression, and if we don't turn back from that right now, it's over. This is it. So you better get on the phone right now. If you're in the state of Texas, you better get on the phone, call Attorney General Greg Abbott's office and tell him, yes, you support the full-on Firearms Protection Act that makes it a felony for federal officials to engage in unconstitutional gun restriction in the state of Texas. You better call your state representatives wherever you live and tell them introduce the Firearms Protection Act, because if you don't draw the line right here, it's over. And let me tell you my personal prediction of what I think is coming up. Why didn't Obama have a high-capacity magazine restriction in his executive orders? There was all this talk that he was going to do that, but he backed off, it seems. He did not do that. Why? Because he has full confidence that they're going to be able to get that through Congress, through legislation. So you have to ask the question then, why does he have that confidence when right now the environment in Congress is saying no to more gun restrictions in Congress? Why does he have that confidence? The answer is because they are planning another major false flag attack in America. A major false flag attack. And I'm here to tell you independently, not even based on what Alex said or InfoWars or anybody else, but just myself as Mike Adams, as an intelligent investigative journalist with no criminal record, absolutely, the cleanest cut guy you'll ever meet. I don't smoke, I don't drink alcohol, I never have consumed alcohol, just my personal choice. Clean cut guy, super clean record, passed all the FBI background checks, all the ATF checks, for class 4 gear, you name it, all right? You're not going to find somebody with a cleaner record than myself. By looking at the data, I am telling you, I believe that they are going to stage another major false flag attack during the debate of gun control restrictions in the U.S. Congress. Because they know that if they stage something big enough, and I'm talking about something like blowing up federal buildings more than what we saw in Oklahoma City, something even perhaps bigger than 9/11. I'm talking about perhaps them doing a dirty bomb, a radiological attack, or a biological attack in a major U.S. city and somehow finding some way to blame that on patriots. That's what is coming. So you better be ready, because if they do that and if they can blame it on patriots and they get the media screaming again and again about how the patriots made this happen and killed 1 million people in some major city, they'll declare martial law. There won't be another election. You won't have any rights whatsoever, and they'll drive America into an all-out war. and that's what they want. So watch out. That's what's coming. All right, stay with me here on the Alex Jones Show. A lot more straight ahead, including Dr. Andrew Wakefield. We'll be right back. Welcome to the third hour of the Alex Jones Show. This is Mike Adams filling in for Alex, and I appreciate you joining us today. We've got so much on our plates. Things are moving very, very rapidly. Now, coming up in the next segment, we've got Dr. Andrew Wakefield joining us here live in studio here in Austin, Texas, to give us the latest information on the U.S. vaccine court admitting that vaccines cause autism. Plus, we're going to get Dr. Wakefield's take on the new psychiatric police state that has just been formed in America by Obama and his 23 executive orders. There was an outstanding breakdown of those executive orders filmed and posted by Aaron Dykes right here on the InfoWars team just, I think, yesterday or the night before that went up. 7 of the 23 executive orders have something to do with mental health. So you can bet they're going to start using psychiatry as a weapon against freedom, while completely ignoring the fact that psychiatry actually creates violent shooters and has been linked to most of these shootings that have taken place. So, wow, what a total scam, a total racket. They're making the problem worse while ignoring the real causes of violence in America today. 2 things I wanted to cover, though, real quick before we bring Dr. Wakefield in studio. One is that, you know, you've got Obama and all these people talking about background checks, that we need to have universal background checks. Why not have universal background checks for presidents? Because let me tell you this. You know that Obama's birth certificate has, I don't know, 17 layers in Adobe Acrobat. It's copied and pasted, and the resolution is different in different parts of the document. The thing is a total fake. It's so obvious. Anybody who knows Photoshop or Acrobat can see that his birth certificate is a fake. Now, if you or I submitted a document like that as part of a background check to purchase a gun, we would be arrested for document fraud. We would be guilty of a felony crime for submitting the same type of document, which is an obvious fraud, that the president of our country is using to claim that he's qualified to be president, or that he meets the constitutional requirements. So why not have universal background checks for presidents, for his cabinet members? Why not have background checks for members of Congress to make sure they can pass a quiz on the Constitution? You know, what is the 10th Amendment? Ask your average congressperson in Washington, D.C., and they won't know. They don't know what it is, or they'll misquote it. They'll say, oh, the 10th Amendment is what gives the government the right to regulate all intrastate commerce. What? What? That's not what's written at all. You people would fail. You get an F, okay? You get an F on liberty, an F on the Constitution. You get an F in Washington on just about everything you're doing today, except those few people that are standing up. And a big thumbs up to Rand Paul, by the way, for his comments on saying that we don't want a king in America today. We've had enough of kings running our lives. So, enough with the kingship. One other comment here before we get into the next segment. Lance Armstrong. I wrote an article about Lance Armstrong. It's posted on Infowars.com right now. He came out last night, and Oprah, who's trying to save her network from terrible ratings, had Lance Armstrong on to have a staged confession, during which Lance Armstrong admitted that he's been lying all along. He doped. He doped with EPO, he doped with testosterone, he doped with his own blood, injecting it back into his veins. I mean, that guy was not on a bike unless he had a needle in his veins before. I mean, all the Tour de France races, he said, he doped to win those races. And in the interview, he didn't even think that it was cheating. He just said, oh, it's just leveling the playing field. I mean, the guy has no remorse. He bullied people, he threatened people, he filed lawsuits against a long list of whistleblowers who were trying to speak out, and now he goes on Oprah and wants us to forgive him? Dude, we don't forgive you. Why don't you give the money back to all the people whose careers that you ruined or destroyed or threatened with your lawsuits? Why don't you give them the money that you gained by cheating in sport? Why don't you do that, and then we might forgive you? That's my comment on Lance Armstrong. Stay with us. We'll be back after this break with Dr. Andrew Wakefield in studio. All right, welcome back to the Alex Jones Show. This is Mike Adams, the editor of naturalnews.com, filling in for Alex today. And in studio joining me now for the rest of this hour is none other than Dr. Andrew Wakefield with some breaking news on the U.S. vaccine court and its recent decision tying vaccines to autism without any question whatsoever. So he'll be breaking that down for us in some detail. Also, we're going to get Dr. Wakefield's take on some of the possible implications of the recent executive orders focused on mental health and psychiatry. And I've even got a copy of the Psychiatry Bible, so to speak, here with me. And we're going to cover oppositional defiance disorder, ODD, which is actually in the psychiatry manual, even though people said I made that up. I didn't make it up, and I'm going to show it to you in the book as we continue here. Plus, we're going to be taking your calls. So if you've got a question for Dr. Wakefield, I'd like to take your call. Go ahead and call. It's 888, isn't it? No, 800. I'm sorry. 800-259-9231 if you've got a question on psychiatry or Dr. Wakefield. If you called earlier for Paul Watson's guest or Representative Toth, I'm going to have to drop you and take new calls on psychiatry and questions for Dr. Wakefield. So go ahead and clear the board, guys, and let new people call back in. And I apologize if you were on hold, but, you know, things are moving very quickly. So, Dr. Wakefield, welcome to the Alex Jones Show. It's good to have you in studio again.
Mike, it's great to be back. Thank you.
Well, a lot has been happening since the last time we spoke right here in the same spot. You've got the British Medical Journal still has not retracted their slanderous statements about you and your research. Is there any update on that front?
Yes, Brian Deere, the editor of the British Medical Journal, and the BMJ themselves are being sued here in the state of Texas. We're going through a jurisdictional battle at the moment. They're saying you don't have the right to sue us here in Texas. This is a British journal. This is a British journalist. But we do. There's a long-arm statute, and they sell their wares and make a profit out of Texas. So on the technical aspects of this, we're confident in winning and getting Brian Deere here before a Texas jury, and that is the key.
Really? Brian Deere might be here in Austin, Texas?
That is what this is all about. I want the American people to see and judge this man for themselves and to judge the quality and the veracity of his story, and they will see how flawed he really is.
Or he could just remain a fugitive from justice, I guess, and refuse to come, and what, you might have to go into extradition proceedings in the UK, or how would that even work?
Well, it's interesting, and it's probably a technical aspect of law, but I would imagine that we would then file a case in England, and he would then be in contempt of the UK courts. But that's another matter. The BMJ themselves have to come because they sell here. This is one of their outlets, so they're obliged if we win the jurisdictional battle.
Well, excellent. I appreciate your veracity, your dedication to pursuing this and not allowing them to just steamroll you with their slanderous, completely false analysis. I mean, they literally just invented things about your research that they pulled out of thin air.
Yeah, I know what the problem here, Mike, is so much bigger. Well, as you probably know, there is an increasing level of attack on scientists and physicians who are acting in the best interests of their patients and not in the best interests of the government or the pharmaceutical industry. And there is a relentless assault on the few, perhaps 5, 10 scientists in the world who are prepared to work on the possible association between vaccines and childhood developmental disorders like autism. And if we do not protect those scientists and doctors, then you're going to find nobody who's prepared to stand up in vaccine court to protect these children, because that's the end of their career. You're going to find no scientist who's prepared to do the valid safety science on vaccines, because it'll be the end of their career. They'll lose their grants. They'll lose everything, just as I did. And so we have got to stand up as a body, as scientists, as a community, as a people, and say these people are valuable and need to be protected. And that is exactly what we're doing here.
Well said. This is about the integrity of science.
Yeah,
I mean, this is
not a personal a revenge attack on Brian Deere. It's so much more important than that. And the community actually said to me, Andy, we need to fight this case. We will raise the capital to help you. Because as you know, Mike, justice belongs to those who can afford it.
Yes.
So we need to take this battle to them in the U.S. courts.
Well, let's talk about the U.S. vaccine court now. Also, there's been significant breaking news that you brought to my attention. An article published at HuffPost. Vaccine court awards millions to 2 children with autism. The court has made the determination that there is a causal link between vaccinations and the development of autism in those children, and they were given an award. Give us a breakdown of that story.
Well, this is fascinating. It's huge. It's a game changer, and it comes on the back of an Italian decision in the Rimini court, which made an identical decision. Here we have a child who was developing perfectly normally in Italy. who had the MMR and regressed into autism. He developed all the typical characteristics that we described originally in the Lancet, including gastrointestinal symptoms, encephalopathy, in other words, generalized brain dysfunction, and his final diagnosis was autism. They settled that case in Italy. The government, importantly, did not fight it. They agreed that the MMR had caused his autism. They only fought it on the basis that they do not make MMR vaccination mandatory in Italy, whereas the judge said, no, sorry, you put so much pressure on parents to have this vaccine, you are to blame now. We have this ruling in the US vaccine court where you have exactly the same sequence of events. Normally developing children get the MMR plus another vaccine in each case of these two children. They then regress into, they have this encephalopathy, a rash, a fever, loss of language, loss of speech, loss of interaction with their siblings, and a regression into autism. They are linked. And what this brings to the public attention once and for all is that the American vaccine court, the Department of Justice, have been hiding behind the vaccine court for so long, behind their table injuries. Now we have a clear sequence of events which links vaccines, MMR in particular, to autism.
All right, if you're just joining us, this is the Alex Jones Show. Mike Adams filling in an interview with Dr. Andrew Wakefield live here in studio in Austin, Texas. And a lot of breaking news on the vaccine front. Now, we published a story not too long ago, Dr. Wakefield, where the CDC admits on their website, and we took a screenshot, quoted their information, they admit that vaccines contain mercury, aluminum, MSG, monosodium glutamate, and formaldehyde. Now, these four substances, should any doctor in any circumstance ever inject a child with aluminum, mercury, MSG, or formaldehyde?
No, it would be unthinkable. If you took these substances on their own and gave them to someone, you would face criminal prosecution, and yet they're saying that this is safe. No, it isn't. It's never been tested for safety. We've just got a recent report from the Institute of Medicine saying that there is a parlous lack of information on vaccine safety science, both in terms of the schedule of the dose that children get and when they get it. We simply do not know. There is no science. And so if people are telling the public that vaccines are safe because they've been shown to be safe, that is not true.
Right, exactly. But it brings up the question, why won't the CDC, the FDA, and the pro-vaccine doctors out there, why won't they say, let's make a clean vaccine? Let's make clean vaccines with no mercury, no thimerosal, no MSG, no formaldehyde, nothing. Like just single-dose vials, right? So they don't need a preservative because they're not used for multiple doses. Why won't they do that?
There are two parts to this answer, Mike, in my opinion, and one of them is accountability. If you make a change, then it's a tacit admission that there was a problem with the vaccine that you had before.
So they'd rather keep harming children rather than fix a problem.
That seems to be the case. And the other problem, Mike, is that they don't want the public to lose confidence. The vaccine schedule, the vaccine policy of any country depends upon the compliance of the populace. In other words, people having enough confidence in the vaccine regulators to say, yes, we'll take your word for it. And if that goes, then it's to try to cross the board. People will lose confidence in vaccines right across the board, and we will have problems.
Well, they are losing confidence in vaccines.
No, Mike, they've lost it. They've lost it. 89% of American parents in a recent study from University of Michigan said that vaccine safety science was their #1 medical research priority. 89% of parents.
Wow.
So the majority of parents have major concerns. They do not believe the CDC. They do not believe what their pediatrician is telling them. They're seeing in their communities, on their streets, in their schools, so many children who are being damaged by these vaccines, with autism at the sort of spearhead of all this, that they do not believe what they're being told.
And it's obvious that they damage children. I mean, I remember even Donald Trump said on the air a couple of months ago that his employees, perfectly healthy children, took them in to the pediatrician, they got vaccinated. The next morning, lights are out, the child's autistic. And it happens to people over and over and over again. There is a temporal correlation between getting the vaccine and getting autism. How can the scientific community even call itself scientific if it dismisses all of this powerful evidence?
It is extraordinary to me. Clinically, it is so obvious. My job as a physician and a scientist is to look for patterns in disease, patterns in clinical presentation, and the pattern here is so common, so similar, and it's exactly as you heard in these court settlements. Normal child, vaccine, prolonged fever, rash, debilitation. The child goes downhill, their immune system goes to pieces,
All right,
and they are never the same again.
Hold that thought, Dr. Wakefield. We're going to continue after this break. This is the Alex Jones Show, and an interview with Dr. Andrew Wakefield. We'll be right back after this break with more, plus your calls. So don't go away. We'll be right back. All right, and we are back on the Alex Jones Show. Thank you for joining us. We are continuing our interview here in studio with Dr. Andrew Wakefield. Yes, the Dr. Wakefield, the champion of academic integrity when it comes to, well, and scientific integrity, actually, more importantly, when it comes to vaccines and investigating with a sense of scientific skepticism what could be the links between vaccines and childhood development disorders such as autism, but not limited to autism. And Dr. Wakefield continues with us in the studio right now. Dr. Wakefield, what kinds of... I want to get the word out about how people can help support your efforts, because this is an important victory. And you mentioned a website during the break. Can you give that out on the air?
Certainly. In order to protect doctors and scientists who are acting in the interests of their patients, but who are being attacked by whatever mainstream medicine is, by the pharmaceutical industry, by the media, because they are not complying with the rules that protect the stock price of various pharmaceutical products, then what we've done is to set up what we call the Academic Integrity Fund, academicintegrityfund.org. And this is a fund that people can pay into, which will protect the legal rights, will allow the people who are coming under attack to fight back, whether it's in the courts or elsewhere. And it's starting with my case right here in Texas in an attempt to get Brian Deere and the British Medical Journal in front of a Texas jury.
And I know it takes money to fight for justice, big time. Are there some attorneys also doing some pro bono work as part of it, or discounted work?
I have an outstanding group of attorneys who are working at a discounted rate because they believe very strongly in the merits of this case.
Well, I'm going to make a donation, by the way. I've been doing a lot of donations lately. I donated to Gun Owners of America. I gave $500 to that group. Larry Pratt, you rock. I gave him $500. I'm going to donate to your group. academicintegrityfund.org is the web address. We got to put the money where it matters. I call that revenue activism. So we take money from our store sales and we just push it into all these things that need support. But thank you for mentioning that website. But continuing on, what do you think about this so-called flu pandemic, almost a fear-mongering thing the CDC is doing right now, saying, oh, the flu is terrible, everybody should go get vaccinated? Isn't that too simplistic of an answer?
We've seen this time and time again, Mike, and I'm not an expert on flu vaccine, but I do know that, for example, flu mutates at a phenomenally fast rate, so predicting which vaccine is going to work against the current flu is such a hit-and-miss affair. And we've seen from analyses, detailed, comprehensive scientific analyses of all the data on flu vaccine around the world in the Cochrane Review, that these vaccines their benefit is minimal at best and restricted to certain groups, not seen in high-risk groups, and therefore there is no merit in those high-risk groups getting them. And the Canadians showing that if you get the flu after being vaccinated because it does not work well, then it is worse. You develop a more severe pattern of disease if you have been vaccinated.
The CDC, which I am convinced just invents numbers out of thin air. I mean, they just pull these out of their hats. And they say if you get the vaccine, your flu will be less severe, but they have absolutely no data to back that up. And they say the vaccine is now, I think they're quoting, it's 62% effective. That number has no basis in anything. They make it up.
I'm sure they do, and they have the ability to make a sow's ear out of a silk purse for the CDC, and I think that's what they've done here. They've made numbers up for so long. What are we to believe? And when you hear these numbers about the people who've had to go to the hospital because they've got flu, how many of those people were vaccinated? Were they part of that group that the Canadians said are going to be worse if they get the flu after having been vaccinated? We don't know. We're not told.
I did a little bit of a survey on that, and I found that about 2/3 in my group of friends and employees and so on, about 2/3 of the people who went to the hospital with influenza. I'm not talking about my employees. They're typically healthy, but people they know, 2/3 of them had been vaccinated against the flu. So how can that be? If the flu works, I mean, if the flu vaccine works, then how can 2/3 of the people in the hospital with the flu be people who got vaccinated? It's not logical.
Yeah, there's something very bad going wrong here. And the idea that you're going to give mercury-containing flu vaccines to pregnant women and to children over the age of 6 months, this is unacceptable.
Tell me about when you were trained in med school. Weren't you taught never give a vaccine to a pregnant woman?
Absolutely. I mean, you never gave anything to a pregnant woman unless absolutely necessary. You know,
No antidepressants.
Absolutely. You've got a very, very vulnerable fetus there. A lot of these compounds are sequestered. They're taken up preferentially into the fetus. The fetus does not have the ability to get rid of them. For example, mercury. If you give a mother mercury, that mercury is going to be is going to get into the fetus, and it doesn't have the excretion mechanisms to get rid of it. So it's going to accumulate.
But the CDC and the vaccine pushers, they engage in what I might call magical thinking, where they say the mercury doesn't harm you because we say it doesn't. We wave a magic wand, we do a little voodoo, big pharma profit voodoo, and suddenly the mercury is safe.
Yeah,
magical.
And they've said the science shows it. The science is in. 2 years ago, the paper came out showing that 74% of the published science shows that there is an association between heavy metal containing vaccines and autism. All
right, well said, Dr. Wakefield. We'll be right back here on the Alex Jones Show, and your calls straight ahead. Welcome back. Your calls straight ahead as we continue our interview with Dr. Andrew Wakefield right here on the Alex Jones Show. This is Mike Adams, the editor of naturalnews.com, filling in. I guess I am, as Alex called me, the unofficial crew member around here. I come in and fill in from time to time whenever I'm needed for that purpose. And Dr. Wakefield, once again, thank you for being here. Hope you're ready to take some calls. Are you good?
Absolutely, I'm ready to go. Yeah.
All right, you got your earpiece in?
Yep.
You ready to go?
I'm good.
All right, let's do it. Let's go to Greg in Utah. Greg, you're on the air with Dr. Andrew Wakefield. Welcome to the show.
Oh, thank you. You know, there was a small natural health company here that was exposing all this information on a daily basis. And the FTC went after them. It was called Daniel Chapter 1. And basically, they attacked their First Amendment rights. And if they were to say anything about this anymore, they're basically going to put them in prison. So they ended their radio program. You know, we need the support of the people. That's the problem, is they're killing the messenger. You know, they're going after the messenger, and they're doing it. I mean, the Federal Trade Commission is who went after them, not the CDC.
Yeah, I'm very familiar with that case. That's a good point. Daniel Chapter 1 was actually a ministry, and they sold some cancer therapies, herbal. And they dared to go on the air and to say that, you know, some of these herbs are mentioned in the Bible, and they can actually help you heal from cancer. And yeah, the FTC came after them. What do you see happening, Dr. Wakefield? And thank you, caller, for your call. But what do you see happening with attacks on the First Amendment rights of people who are attempting to raise awareness among the public of alternative or holistic healing therapies?
There are myriad cases of local health authorities, local regulators going after alternative practitioners. I mean, these attacks are going on all the time. In fact, Texas is probably one of the worst states in the country for that.
The State Medical Board.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and Dr. Brzezinski.
Absolutely, a classic example.
Yeah.
Where I gather that they've now tried, the FDA are trying to get the patent on his products, you know, having attacked him for years. Now, that's what I've heard through the grapevine.
Yeah.
Whether it's true or not, it would be a wonderful irony to conclude that story, as long as he comes out of it well. But
one of the greatest groups guilty of biopiracy is Big Pharma. They will attack an herb and say it's useless, it's useless, it's useless, and then they will steal a molecule from that herb, like turmeric, for example. They'll modify it, patent it, and then say, this is the best drug ever.
Oh, yeah, they're in the jungles now collecting a number of plants and herbs that they believe may be the future to their success, because they've run out of other things apart from vaccines to profit from. But the biggest impact I see is in the media. You know, here we have a classic case, a groundbreaking case, two cases where the Vaccine Court awards for children who developed autism following MMR vaccine. It's picked up by the UK media. It's reported there. Not a single word in the mainstream media here. Why? Because their revenues derive from advertising dollars from the pharmaceutical industry.
And that was a 1997 decision, I believe, from the FDA that legalized pharmaceutical advertising on mainstream television, because before that it was illegal, and it remains illegal in every other nation around the world.
And what they did, Mike, is I think quite a smart thing, is that they paid a lot of money. And so that the media became dependent on that income. You know, it's like you kind of ramp things up according to the income that you get, and then you can't do without it. And so suddenly they've got them right where they want them.
Got them. Yeah, well, we'll just leave it at that. All right, let's go to the next call. Rob in Texas, you're on the air. Rob, go ahead. What's your question, sir?
Well, good afternoon, gentlemen. My statement actually speaks to psychiatric tyranny that I see and to vaccines. My son, who is on the spectrum with Asperger's, was vaccinated. He has depression and sometimes anger issues. We take him to see a counselor. We were going to take him to see a child psychiatrist. And so my wife was getting that set up. He asks her, you know, do you have insurance? She naively says, well, yes. What kind? Okay, we accept that. She goes, but we want to pay for this out of pocket. He says, no, you can't do that. If we accept your insurance, they have to pay or it's insurance fraud. This is new.
You can't pay cash.
No, they wouldn't let us pay cash. Needless to say, we didn't book an appointment.
Yeah, well, good question, Rob. Go ahead, Dr. Wakefield.
There's a big issue, several big issues here, actually. One is, are the origins of your child's anger and violence or aggressive issues due to underlying pain or discomfort? One thing we've discovered, in fact, we reported years and years ago, 15 years ago, is these children have an inflammatory bowel disease in many cases, and that is a cause of gastrointestinal symptoms, constipation, diarrhea, alternating constipation and diarrhea, pain. Kids in pain, sudden outbursts of anger. And when you correct that that intestinal inflammation, all that goes away. In other words, is there a need for a reappraisal of children for medical problems, underlying medical problems? Do they not need to be on pharmaceutical agents for anger and depression at all? And that's my belief. I think
very good
source of problems.
Point. Yeah, if someone has chronic ongoing pain, in digestive pain or even musculoskeletal pain, whatever the case may be, you know, they're going to be kind of crabby or maybe depressed and in a bad mood. That's not a psychiatric problem. That's a physiological problem.
It's absolutely essential to rule out physiological medical problems before you resort to the belief that this is a psychiatric problem and then put them on major medications, which may have any number of adverse effects and for what are not indicated for autism or Asperger's disorders in these children. So there may be an alternative approach. Mike, is it Mike?
Yeah.
No, sorry, no. The man on the phone.
Rob.
Rob.
I thought you were asking me my name. Yeah, I'm Mike. What, you forgot me already? What's going on?
So, Rob, if there are any underlying symptoms that might be corrected, please bear that in mind and take that approach first.
All right, very good. Very good question, Rob. Thank you for your call. And by the way, here, overhead cam shot, this is the DSM right here, DSM-4, the Diagnostic and Statistical Manual of Mental Disorders, the so-called Bible of modern psychiatry. And check it out. Here it is, page 100, oppositional defiant disorder. Oppositional defiant disorder right here. There we go. Get in view. Check this out, Dr. Wakefield. You can be diagnosed with this, and I imagine you and I have both been, quote, diagnosed with this, by simply disagreeing with someone in a position of authority. It's just written right in here. Oh, and there are probably drugs that they can, oh, look, often argues with adults.
Should be something that's in the First Amendment, I think.
Often blames others for his or her mistakes. Well, we don't do that, but easily annoyed by others. I'm annoyed by liberals who are trying to take away our rights. I'm easily annoyed by gun grabbers. I don't know who you're annoyed by. Journal editors who slander you.
How long have we got?
Yeah. Well, anyway, there it is. It's real, folks. People said I made this up.
No, it's right there, and there are a couple of people
it's right here
from it right in this room. But
exactly.
I think that manual it underlies everything that's wrong with this disorder, particularly autistic spectrum disorders. The worst thing is that it ever fell into the hands of child psychiatrists, I'm afraid. That's my opinion, and it's one I strongly believe. And what we see is a revision of this document time and time again, DSM, when they should be focusing on the real issue. What is driving this epidemic of autism? For a child born today, the risk of an autistic spectrum disorder is going to be 1 in 25. That is unacceptable. And when what you find is the psychology community spend their time revising this document. Not everyone, but a lot of people focus on this, and it's a displacement activity. It's moving away from what is really essential about this. How do you stop this epidemic, and how do you treat kids effectively who've already got it?
You know what this reminds me of? I mean, look at this manual. This thing is huge. I mean, check this out. That's how big it is. It's a massive, thick manual, and it's getting bigger in version 5. All they do is they observe a lot of nutritional deficiencies, a lot of underlying problems, and they give it a bunch of different names. This is like physicists looking for the God particle and naming all the little things they spot in the supercolliders, saying, oh, that's the muon, that's the gluon, that's the bluon, whatever they name it. It's like, no, people, there's one unified theory underneath all this. You're just naming things to try to make it sound scientific. There's really only a couple of basic, core, fundamental physiological truths or physical truths underneath all this.
Yeah, one of the great truths, Mike, is you go back and you talk to the mother. What happened to your child? And mothers have got to trust in their instincts, because their instincts are the reason we're on this earth at the moment. not the DSM manual. So that can go in the trash.
All right, let's trash it. There it goes.
Talk to the mother and say, what happened to your child?
Very good. Let's take another call. I'm getting excited here because I'm suffering from oppositional defiant disorder. Jesse from New Orleans, you are on the air with Dr. Andrew Wakefield. Jesse, welcome to the show.
Mike, how you doing?
I'm doing great, man.
So, right in line with your conversation about the DSM, I was a victim of doctors who basically used that book as their Bible. When I was a kid, my parents made me go see a therapist, and I basically started making things up based on what I was reading, as diagnosis for certain things. I actually read Michael Crichton's Terminal Man, and basically just started telling him I was having all the symptoms that the main character in that book had.
Really?
And they completely took my word for it.
So what were you diagnosed with?
A psychiatrist, who then gave me some medication, and then inevitably I started telling them I was hearing voices, even though I wasn't. And because, it was a game. It was fun for me. I was 13.
Yeah.
So they admitted me. And by the time it was all said and done, I was on Wellbutrin when it first came out, Depakote, Navain, and they would give me Thorazine whenever I acted up.
So, and also probably those records could then be used against you now to deny you access to purchasing a firearm also.
I was a minor, and interestingly enough, I was still allowed to join the military at 17, so you figure that out. But beyond that, my kids, I have 2 twin boys that were born 8 months ago.
Yeah.
7 weeks premature. And of course, they were the whole time my wife was pregnant. You need to double up on your flu vaccine. You need to do all this and that and the other thing. And I was like, no, we're not doing that.
So were you able to keep her protected from vaccines during pregnancy?
Well, I've exposed her to a lot of your research and Alex's research and all that stuff, and I've shown her the numbers. And one of the greatest things after the kids were born, I was able to, read up on a lot of different things, and I showed the doctors because, you can never get a doctor when you need one, but you tell them you don't want the kids to have the vaccines. You'll see everybody in the whole hospital. And
all right, well,
they started showing us all this documentation, and I was like, well, I'm reading here that there's a fund that the government has for families who have adverse side effects from vaccinations. How many incidents do you think have to happen before the federal government puts a fund together like that?
All right, good question, Jesse. Thank you for your call, Dr. Wakefield. Let's talk about the pressure that physicians and even physicians' assistants and so on put on new moms to be injected even before childbirth, during childbirth, and after childbirth, even the medicalization of childbirth in our country today, around the world, all of Western medicine.
Well, Mike, any pressure at all in the absence of informed consent and adequate safety studies is too much. There is huge pressure, and there are no safety studies, particularly of giving the vaccines to mothers during pregnancy, where it's been specifically contraindicated in the past.
Yeah, causes stillbirth or causes spontaneous abortions.
Yeah, and there is no informed consent. A friend of mine went to for a vaccine, in fact, to go into nursing school the other day, and she was given 2 MMRs just a month apart. There's never, ever, ever, ever been a safety study of that procedure. When asked, why should I have a second MMR after the first one just a month ago? And she said, well, the mumps vaccine doesn't work.
Therefore, you need another one.
Booster. And well, then why do I have to have measles and rubella at the same time? You can see this cash cow for the pharmaceutical industry,
right?
Just because that's all they've got, because that's all they're prepared to manufacture.
Well, and also, what about veterinary medicine? Because if the theory behind vaccines is that you inject your dog with a vaccine and the dog's body builds antibodies to that vaccine, why do you get a card or an email from your vet every year? Oh, your dog needs the same vaccine again every year. Yeah. I thought the theory was that the antibodies are there. They don't go away, at least not. I mean, they're not supposed to. You're supposed to build a database, your immune system database, right?
Yeah, you could argue that your immune system database needs boosting every so often, but there's no science on this. So when they introduced MMR in the UK, the minister who was responsible said, this is 1 dose for life. Okay, so people believed them, and so people did it. What happened is they found it didn't work. Neither the measles nor the mumps vaccine lasted for very long, so now it's 2 doses, 3 doses. Soon we're going to be on this treadmill of having to have these vaccines every year because they do not work. In other words, here's the irony. particularly for mumps vaccine, the vaccine is successful for the pharmaceutical industry precisely because it doesn't work. And therefore the volume of sales goes up dramatically.
That's exactly it, because when people go get the mumps vaccine, they have a false sense of security, thinking they're protected from the mumps, and they might thereby not take other precautions such as boosting vitamin D intake, which is very powerful for preventing mumps and many other infectious diseases. So you're right. The vaccines not working is what makes them sell so well, and it allows the CDC to put out another fear-mongering announcement, oh, there's another epidemic of mumps, better go get vaccinated, even though it doesn't work.
That's right. And we're seeing mumps outbreaks in highly vaccinated populations now, precisely because it doesn't work. And it was a vaccine that was never needed in the first place. Not my word, the CDC's word, and the Department of Health in England.
Why doesn't the media, I mean, I guess we already know the answer, but it's a shame the media never, ever reports that in every outbreak they cover, most of those who suffer from the outbreak, whether it's mumps or flu or something else, have already been vaccinated against that very thing. They never report that.
Yes, the reporting in the media of the vaccine issue is so one-sided, so distorted, so pro the CDC, pro the pharmaceutical industry, pro more and more vaccines. We're not going to get the truth from the mainstream media, I'm afraid, and that's going to last for some time.
Yeah, we're not going to get truth from them on any front. Let's go to another caller, Nick in Pennsylvania. Nick, welcome to the show. You're on the air. Go ahead, sir.
Mike, first of all, I want to say I think that you're doing a great job for filling in for Alex.
Thanks, Nick.
And you're doing one heck of a good job.
I'm just doing my best here, man. We're all fighting for the same liberties. That's all there is to it.
Absolutely. And Dr. Wakefield, I just want to say it's really a pleasure, sir, to be talking to you. I myself actually am one of America's few remaining pioneer research scientists, and it's such a good coincidence that you happen to be on, because there is a couple of subjects that I'd like to talk to you about of very important concern.
Yeah, go ahead. Let's hear it.
Okay, one of the subjects is I definitely agree with the vaccine problem, especially being given to children, infants, babies. There's definitely a problem with mercury and heavy metals, and I think that there absolutely positively is a link to autism because of that mercury. That's why, as far as tuna fish is concerned, that has finally been brought to light, that you have to be careful with certain fish you eat because of the mercury levels that are high in certain types of fish, tuna being one of them. But another problem is also the fact that, and it figures that there happens to be a phone ringing in the background as my call comes.
No, go ahead. We're getting close to break. Go ahead with your question.
I apologize for that.
All right.
But what the other thing that I wanted to bring up, you know what, let me unplug this other phone.
Well, let me just ask Dr. Wakefield to comment on that. So the FDA at one point did say you shouldn't eat too much tuna fish because of mercury, but they even backed off of that. So it's suddenly like mercury is the favorite element of the scientific, medical, corrupt community. What's up with that?
I'm told by the experts that mercury is second only to plutonium on this planet as a toxin. So it's not safe in any form or in any dose. There are no safe levels, no safe forms. The idea that one's better than the other.
We'll be right back. And we're back on the Alex Jones Show. Thank you again for joining us on our final segment today. And by the way, don't miss the Alex Jones Show Sunday, 4 to 6 p.m. Central Time. And also Monday, I know there will be some big breaking news Monday on Obamacare and some hidden payoffs to Big Pharma that we have located in the Obamacare, so-called Affordable Health Care Act, which has made health care unaffordable for almost everyone. But Dr. Wakefield continues with us in the studio here for this last segment, so let's get right to the question of psychiatric drugs and their links to violent shooters time and time again. Dr. Wakefield, although I know perhaps psychiatry obviously is not your specialty, but you are well-trained, MD, you're a skeptical thinking scientist. What are your thoughts on psychiatric drugs and violent shootings?
Well, you know, it's interesting because it brings in the subject of autism again. Back in 1996, I was first introduced to this. I don't remember the Port Arthur massacre in Tasmania. A guy in the early morning shot over 40 people, 45 people dead in a cafe, and it was said at the time that he had Asperger's syndrome, high-functioning autism. In fact, he didn't at all. And when you go back and read the psychiatric records from the prison psychiatrist who assessed him there, he had symptoms which specifically precluded Asperger's. In other words, the common denominator was not that they had a psychiatric or an autistic spectrum disorder. So I went back and I reviewed so many of these cases that have occurred of multiple killings, actions of mass violence in schools or some shopping malls, and looking for a common denominator. It comes down to this, Mike, looking for patterns. What is the pattern? Is it an autistic spectrum disorder? No. Is it a personality disorder? No. What was the common denominator was that they were all taking psychotropic medications. And in many cases, psychotropic medications that were not licensed, not indicated for the particular problem that they had. There is no, or there certainly was at that time, no psychotropic medication that could be used for treating Asperger's. And what we now find is that in the last few years, Janssen Pharmaceuticals, subsidiary of J&J, Abbott Laboratories and GlaxoSmithKline have been pushing these drugs off-label to vulnerable children in many cases.
And they've been sued by some states for the off-label marketing of their drugs as well.
Absolutely, and I have seen this at first hand. I've seen violence in children with autism at first hand, not because they're autistic, but I believe because they're being pushed these drugs off license for inducements like going to a golf day or going to the spa. It's absolutely farcical and disgraceful that doctors have put children at risk, giving them these powerful drugs that were never indicated for the problems that they have. And I believe that a large part of the risk factor for these outbreaks of mass violence is the drugs that they're on.
Well said. And just to clarify, when I say they've been sued by the states, I don't know if those you mentioned have been sued, but I know by and large, big pharmaceutical companies have been sued time and time. Those three have? Okay, that's good to confirm. One of the things we know about these drugs is they tend to create a sense of cognitive detachment from reality. So, for example, the Columbine shooters said that they believed they were playing out a first-person shooter video game. So some people might start to blame the video games, but I think more is the mindset, the detachment in the mind that's caused by the psychiatric drugs. So is this detachment something that you've also seen as a pattern in other violent outbursts?
Well, it's difficult to tell exactly what's going on in the mind of people when they're having, for example, violent ideation. Are they playing a game? Do they suddenly feel the world is against them? With the SSRIs, the second-generation antidepressants, it's often violence in those people who have no history whatsoever of violent behavior. They suddenly have these violent outbursts. And I've seen it in some of our patients, and it stops when we stop the drug.
And isn't it interesting that Obama's 23 executive orders, not one of them looked at the link between psychiatric drugs and violent shootings? So he may be ignoring the actual cause of all this.
He may be. I don't know, you don't know, but we do know that that's a common denominator, and to miss it out in trying to find the culprit for these outbreaks means that there are going to be more and more of these attacks because they're not getting to the heart, the core problem that is causing them in the first place.
Well, they want more attacks, Dr. Wakefield. They want more attacks because it'll let them ban more firearms, knives, hammers, you name it. Thank you for being on the show, Dr. Wakefield. Retransmission begins now, and thank you for joining us today here on The Alex Jones Show. This is Mike Adams. Take care.